Welcome into Boxing Scene Today. Well, we've seen a lot of legacies in combat sports ruined by positive drug tests. But one kind of drug where you can test positive for it, but man, you really got to try. And does it affect your legacy the way PEDs do? According to reports, Joseph Parker testing positive for cocaine on the day of the Fabio Wardley loss, where he was TKO'd in round number 11. Now, help me break it down. Perfect person to help me break this down. Paulie Malignaggi in studio. All right, I know we're laughing here, but the reason we're laughing, Paulie, is you know as well as I do, you have to try to get busted for recreational drugs. Why? Let me explain. It was VADA that did the testing. USADA has their own. Every testing organization kind of has their own policy, but they never test or hardly ever test for recreational drugs out of competition. They don't care if you're in the middle of camp. It's basically the day before and right after might have a recreational test. So you're not in the cage or the ring high. As long as you don't do it then, you're not going to get popped. He was popped apparently the day of the fight.
It's that's more concerning to me. Is, because you know that at Joseph Parker's age, you know that. It's like you don't know that. You got to know that at Joseph Parker's age. I mean, so for it to be a failed drug test at that point, you start to wonder if there's something a little deeper.
You got to have a problem.
Yeah,
I mean,
I was trying to beat around the bush, but directly. I mean, you can't wait till another day or two, and then you just do it then. I mean, if that's what you're into, because
they test you day after.
You wouldn't have popped if you would have just waited another couple of days, right? So, maybe I don't know. Maybe this is what sometimes is needed to get help. I remember David Benavidez failed, and he's like, I'm gonna get help about this, and for all intents and purposes, we assume he doesn't do it anymore.
He's a lot younger too when he popped.
Yeah.
That's another thing we were talking about. By the way, of course, we discussed this stuff off camera before we started. And your thing was, man, he's a little old to be.
Yeah, to be enjoying those kind of recreational drugs. Usually, Usually you go through something like that if you're the type to you'll go through that crazy period when you're younger, you're making money and all that other stuff, and then you get a little older. You're like, you know what, I got to get myself together.
Settle down.
I want to settle my life down a little bit. I want to settle my money down a little bit because obviously Joseph Parker, we assume is fine financially. So, but you're at the age where you're not spending it on drugs anymore. So you get a little older. Now you're spending it on more responsible stuff. I don't know, man. I guess we're laughing about it. We're not making jokes about it because it's a serious matter. But it's you want to laugh about it because it's like, wow. It's like, man, I can't. It's almost like.
You have to try. The way I open up, you almost have to try to get busted.
Yeah. And then you look at the fight. He got upset in the fight. So now it's gonna, it's gonna be more of a lightning rod of criticism because
2-year ban too. It's gonna happen with this.
And also you would have, even if you would have won, you would have got the win taken off your record, right? If you would have failed this test anyway. So, man, if you get a 2-year ban at Joseph Parker's age, that's tough.
That's it. It's gonna be really hard.
That's tough, man. That's tough. Yeah. Yeah, it's something really, I guess, there's a lot of conversation points when it comes to this kind of stuff. And, but the opinion generally has to be, dude, I mean, you got to be more responsible at this age. You should be responsible all the time. It's the right thing to do. But granted, when you're young, sometimes you're influenced and the party life and all this other stuff. But I'm really shocked if an older fighter fails for this. Usually an older fighter, I will be less shocked if they fail for PED tests because they're trying to make up what they lost from their youth. But, man, a recreational drug at this age, it's usually the other way around. It's usually the younger fighters that fall into that recreational drugs trap. And by the time you're a little bit older, you reach into your 30s. Granted, some guys never get out of it. Don't get me wrong. I mean, we can think of some other guys that just had this problem throughout their life, right? But Parker just didn't come off as that kind of guy, Granted, nobody's perfect. No, we're not here to judge, but we hope everybody gets help, I guess.
One of the things I'm kind of curious about, and you and I extend back as fans long enough to have seen fighters who were train wrecks in the 80s and 90s. But once again, as long as you weren't on it 2 days before and 1 day after, they're not. Like, when you think about the app, and admitted by, we're not outing anybody. These guys were very,
But there was also guys who, couldn't be responsible enough in their youth. It's always in their youth. Again, granted, some guys just never beat it, right? I don't know. I think of Hulk Pryor, right? He was,
Hector Camacho, of course.
Hector Camacho.
It, yeah.
But I also think of guys who, underperform because of guys like Terrell Biggs, where, he was known to have that kind of problem and really his career never lived up to things. It's usually at a younger age. It's even Mike Tyson, when he was young, he's admitted himself, it's just, you don't see it at an older age, man. I mean, not that Parker is a elder statesman or anything, but he's an elder statesman in comparison to other boxers, especially when it comes to this kind of failed test.
Well, another thing, just to put a button on this, is that PEDs can be a legacy killer, right? You test hot for PEDs. First thing people say is, "Oh, your whole career you could have been dope." I now question all of your wins. Recreational drugs don't do that.
You know what? I'm going to push back on it, Jimmy. In other sports, yeah. In boxing, we have a fan base and media full of absolute degenerates who don't even care, dude. They will just throw it in there, but you see no punishment at all. PEDs in baseball, there's guys who still maybe should be in the Hall of Fame and still aren't, just because they were in a generation where they happened. Not even because they got failed, just because they were in that generation. In boxing, there's not even a delay on your Hall of Fame induction. If you failed for PED tests, or even if there's the generation itself, 3 years, you're in. You know what I mean? They're absolutely spineless in the voting for the Hall of Fame in boxing. So I can't say people will, tarnish you in boxing. But as far as the recreational drugs is concerned, for the PED test, no, tarnish you in boxing. But as far as recreational drugs are concerned, it's more so a concern like, okay, we hope that, it's something that he can handle and, it's a habit you can kick, because whether you have it under control or not, it's still not a good habit. It's still bad for your health and so on and so forth. So it's still eventually something that you want to be able to kick regardless. And different people, some people have a what they call addictive personality. Some people don't, I gotta say, if you're failing before a fight, man, I gotta question whether you have a little bit of an addiction problem.
And obviously, we hope it gets taken care of. We hope he gets help if that's what he needs. But a 2-year ban, to your point, might be the end of his career. But I'm glad you brought up Hall of Fame and the credentials of getting into it, because Joe Calzaghe was asked about the Hall of Fame credentials of Canelo Alvarez in an interview with Boxing Scene. This is what he had to say.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, I think even though, when you look at it, I think Galvin Priv is an all-time great, to be honest, because he had, like you just said, he's lost his biggest fights, but he's still a great fighter. The among the fights he's had, among the wins he's had, he's had some great wins, but he's against the top fighters he's lost, isn't he? Going from Mayweather, I thought he lost the one Golovkin, definitely lost one of the Golovkin fights, but yeah, listen, man. He's had a great career, man. You can't. I know everybody. You keep fighting, you're gonna lose. Father Time catches up with everybody. Like, at all he is now. I just hope he doesn't go on too long and get beaten by mediocre fighters.
Interesting statement from Joe Calzaghe saying, the losses kind of hold Canelo back. You have been critical, Paulie, of Canelo, but it's more the fights he didn't take rather than the losses he's had that you've been critical of. I mean, he lost to Mayweather. He lost to Dimitri Bivol. He lost to Terrence Crawford. I mean, 2 first ballot Hall of Famers. Bivol might get there by the time his career is over. But this idea that his losses were somehow, I don't know, not disqualifying, but weigh on him heavily. He lost to all-time greats, probably, by the time it's said and done.
I think Calzaghe was trying to be politically correct. You can see he was a little bit stuttering in the way he's trying to break it down. But he's trying to make a point, but at the same time, he's trying to be ginger about it because Canelo has a big fan base. I'll give it to you. You and me, I don't tiptoe around anything.
That's why we're talking about it, Paulie.
I'll give it to you straight, right? The way I think Canelo's resume, as far as fighters he's fought, is better than Calzaghe. Calzaghe fought a lot of guys that were not recognizable. But however, having said that, I don't think Calzaghe loses to Canelo. I think Calzaghe was world class. I thought Calzaghe could have pushed himself a little more as far as some of the fighters he fought or could have fought. The Kessler win, I think, is a great win. Hopkins and Roy are a little bit past their prime, but Hopkins still went on to accomplish some things afterwards, so it's still a great win.
Beat Pavlik up after that.
Because Hopkins did some things afterwards, so regardless, it's still a great win. So it remains a great win. Roy didn't really have any great wins at that point anymore. He was just getting beat. That was, matter of fact, the Calzaghe loss was just a along the progression of decline that Roy had. Roy's decline already started after the Tarver fight. He lost to Glenn Johnson. The Calzaghe fight came after that, and so on and so forth. So it wasn't the Roy win is hard to rate in terms of it's just a name, but stylistically speaking, Calzaghe is a busy guy. Throws a bunch of punches in bunches. Very confusing lefty, awkward. Doesn't stop. Canelo doesn't like a pace at all. And one thing we've seen about Canelo, a pace bothers him. So I think head to head, I think Calzaghe, and people call me a Canelo hater or whatever, but if I didn't think Calzaghe could beat Canelo, I'd tell you. I really would. I just, because like I said, I do have some things about Calzaghe's resume that I think could have been better. Like I don't just give all praise or all criticism. I break it the way I see it, right? I think Calzaghe was a great fighter, but I think he could have pushed himself a little more in terms of fighting some better opposition in some of the ways. Like, for example, I don't know, Mario Vate.
Yep.
Twice. Nah, I mean, even once was, we never heard of Mario Vate back then, I don't think Mario Vate did anything except fight Calzaghe, right? Byron Mitchell was a little past his prime, but he dropped Calzaghe. Robin Reed, there was a controversial win there. Robin Reed when Calzaghe beat him. So again, you got to look at Canelo's resume too. I criticize Canelo because I feel like he doesn't fight certain fighters, and he does, especially in their prime. But there are certain fights that he took, and even controversial, like a controversial win over Lara. He may not have won the Lara fight, but he fought a very difficult Lara.
Yeah,
he fought a very difficult Lara. He fought
Cotto.
But Cotto's getting a little past it. It's at a higher weight. Granted, Cotto did win a WBO title afterwards. Yep. I think Canelo's resume compared to Calzaghe's resume, I think Canelo's resume is better. But I think if I had to match them head to head, who I think personally would win, I think Calzaghe wins rather easily because a pace on Canelo is like kryptonite. I mean, he just has no answer for the pace. And we saw that a lot. He really told a lot in the Bivol fight.
100%.
Yeah. And Calzaghe, one thing you were guaranteed against Calzaghe, you were guaranteed a pace put on you. So I think if I gotta button it up, I think criticizing Canelo's resume is a bit harsh. He could have fought some guys more in their prime. I think it's a bit harsh, but I think that head to head, Calzaghe shuts him out almost, man. I don't think Canelo has an answer because one thing Canelo has shown also is an inability to adjust when he's getting beat. Anytime he's gotten beat, he's shown an absolute inability to adjust at all. So I think Calzaghe beats him pretty easily if they had gone head to head.
What I'm curious about is the criticism of Calzaghe. Do you think it's part of that thing that we have criticized of, man, the O, especially with Mayweather, became so important. People overemphasize, this guy beat him, but this guy beat him. Well, yeah, the all-time greats lost because they fought really great guys. The idea that Calzaghe is kind of that school of like, well, he lost. Well,
yeah,
that happens. But
I mean,
do you look more at the resume than the losses?
You got to judge a little bit of both. Like, I don't think it's all one or all the other. I think some of it has to come. Like, for example, I think Mayweather's old resume is better than Calzaghe's old resume. So, but Calzaghe still get credit for the old resume. I think Calzaghe was an excellent fighter. My disappointment with Calzaghe at times is I think he could have gone after more guys. Like they could have because if you look at the way he fought, he's a very difficult guy to deal with. I mean, that lefty and the way he threw the punches and the angles at which they came and the speed at which they came and even the footwork, the quick in and out. He's a very difficult guy to deal with, man. But, I would have liked to see it against some other more recognizable names, more so in their prime as well. But again, like I've already made my points here, Jimmy. You know what I mean? For me, it's okay. If you compare resume to resume, okay, Calzaghe may be undefeated, but Canelo has a better resume as far as who he's fought. But if I match them head to head, I think Canelo would be a name on Calzaghe's resume, not the other way around.
Last question was the question he was asked about the Hall of Fame credentials. Canelo, Hall of Fame, I think it's pretty obvious he's going to get in first ballot. What's your thought?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the only question mark for Canelo in the Hall of Fame would be the PED test. But since we live in a degenerate sport where that doesn't even matter to the voters, his failed PED test is not going to matter. He'll be a first ballot Hall of Famer because the voters, the media in boxing are absolutely spineless and degenerate. So they'll put him in the first ballot, just like other guys who've been criticized or have maybe even failed have gone in a first ballot as well. It's not other sports where there's more of a standard held for things like that, where it's actually like a slap in the face when that specific standard is broken. In boxing, where it should be held to the highest standard because people die, the spinelessness of the media, of the voters, is impeccable. So I think Canelo will get in on the first ballot. I think if we were just basing it on resume alone and boxing alone, Canelo would get in. The only question mark I would have is, again, the failed PD test, not the resume speaking, because resume wise, yeah, Canelo would be a first ballot Hall of Famer to me.
That's right. Always kicking, not just a criticism.
As is Calzaghe, of course.
Calzaghe, first ballot Hall of Famers. Right, we're giving out love everywhere. Boxing Scene Today for all your boxing news. We'll be back as always. This is where you check us out. Join us. Find out why millions are watching.